Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Inept General bringing you a video on the new Kislev units that we are going to see coming up on the tabletop return of Warhammer Fantasy. For those of you who perhaps haven't heard the news as of yet, quite a while ago, Games Workshop said they were going to be bringing back Warhammer Fantasy as Warhammer The Old World, and they've released a couple of sketches over the last few months, if not weeks, about some of the first units they might be releasing, and they are focused around the Kingdom of Kislev. So let's take a look at them, and I'll give you some of my thoughts on what we have so far. For those of you who perhaps don't know, some video is always someone's first video. Kislev is a region to the northeast of the Empire in the Warhammer Fantasy world, a very icy region, and they are the first line of defense against the evil forces of chaos. And Games Workshop never really fully developed this army. There was an army book for them, they had a few units, but it's good to see they're taking another look at Kislev, which is always a fun region I've enjoyed the lore of for a long time. I've actually done a full series on the lands of Kislev, the armies we might expect to see in Total War Warhammer, as well as videos on the Tsar and Tsarina of Kislev, father and daughter rather than husband and wife there. So do check out that series, popping up in the top right hand corner now, or I'll maybe put a link down in the description below. Let's have a look at what Games Workshop are proposing as some of the new units for the Kislev army. Here's the blurb we got. One new unit that's in the early stages of development is set in the Ice Court, the seat of the ruling Tsar or Tsarina, known as the Ice Guard. They're an elite fighting formation of warrior women equally skilled with bow and blade, but where they differ significantly from other Kislevite units we've seen in the past is that they're able to channel the elemental magic of their realm in a similar manner to the Ice Queen, the most powerful practitioner of this unique form of sorcery. Here are some awesome pieces of concept art, so let's take a look at them, courtesy of Forge World's Mark Bedford. And it looks pretty cool. Armored, all done up because of the cold weather, magical elements on their head, on magical ice probably pendant around the chest there, a couple of variations. Some magic ice weaponry is what they're likely to be yielding there. Now, I've heard some complaints about this unit, that it's a bit too sort of Age of Sigmar-y, high magic, all of that kind of thing. But I think it actually kind of fits. Maybe not with the lore of the tabletop of Kislev, but perhaps with the lore that they delved into a bit more in the role-playing game of Warhammer Fantasy. And in that, they go into a lot more about what the society of Kislev is like. And there's this whole structure around the Ice Mages. Now, the most famous Ice Mage is, of course, the Tsarina herself. She's the most powerful currently, and she continues on the bloodline of the first Tsarina, who led her people from the east into the lands of what we now know as Kislev. She was the first one to be able to use ice magic, and her blood has diffused through her people a little bit, giving usually, and I think maybe actually only women, the gift of being able to use ice magic. Now, it's more prominent amongst the nobility, so it makes sense that they're maybe guarding the court. They're from noble families themselves, so that kind of tracks with that lore. And also, the Tsarina is by no means the only one who can use ice magic in Kislev. In the role-playing game, they describe this society as there are a number of women, and all women within Kislev society are tested for the ability, whether they're nobility or not. So, peasant girl could have the gift, and then she's taken into the school and taught how to use her gifts properly. With that, we can assume that some of these witches who then go on to take apprentices, much like the Jedi or what have you, they're going around with their apprentices and teaching them how to use the ways of magic at some part of their magical education, maybe fail, maybe don't get past the stage of apprenticeship, they don't become full-blown ice mages, and really have the gifts to use ice magic, but not really much else. It's not too far beyond the realm of possibility that, having been taken away from their parents at a relatively young age, that they're then sent to a more sort of militaristic upbringing to use the limited gifts they have in the maximum way it would benefit the people of Kislev, who really have to make use of all of the resources they have available to them. So I think from a lore perspective, it makes sense for these guys. In fact, I actually suggested in my units video for the Kislev that Creative Assembly might eventually give us, probably in Total War Warhammer 3, a unit from the role-playing game known as Ice Maidens. who would use projectile magic and also be pretty good in hand-to-hand combat with ice blades, is a unit that Creative Assembly might use or create. So this looks like an adaptation of that concept, but just giving them actual physical bows and physical sort of blades to be able to use. So that's how that could maybe fit in the niche of the new upcoming tabletop game. How that works, we're yet to see. We haven't seen any rules or anything of the sorts like that at all. I think in terms of the lore, they fit all right. They actually place very nicely within Kislev's society as we understand it to date. In terms of how Creative Assembly might use these guys, I think they could probably use them quite well, or something very similar to them, if not the Ice Guards themselves, because the Kislevite roster has a bit of a hole as far as Total War Warhammer is concerned, in that there's not a lot of units that do magical damage necessarily rolled into their army roster. These guys could help fill that gap. There are, of course, ice mages, which you'd get in the army, but in terms of hand-to-hand combat, not a lot of necessarily magical damage going down. These guys would really help deal with that issue. So we could see these or some variation of these in a future Total War Warhammer setting. So that's exciting to think about. We also got some heraldry shown off. So with the Tsarina there. Now the Tsarina is the current head of state, and Tsar Boris, who we might talk about in a little bit actually, was the previous head of state, her father. The Tsarina showing up in the flags there, very much the Ice Queen, all-powerful ice mage that she is. The next unit we got a couple of weeks ago, I think it was now, which is the notion of the Bear Cavalry. Now, there's a long history with the Bear Cavalry and the Kislev army and sort of fan reactions and what have you, but I want to concentrate first by maybe just having a look at it, and I think this sort of concept art that we've seen for the Bear Cavalry looks absolutely fantastic. I love the color usage there, very much in line with some of the colors of Kislev. The blades on the side, all kinds of weaponry, and the mounted sort of reindeer horns on the front of the polar bear there. All lovely little touches from the artist. And we've got a couple of other variations here as well, with the Bear Cavalry just looking fantastic, with some perhaps of the magical variant of the magic ice on them there in the bottom right. So that's a very interesting aspect, and the thing with Bear Cavalry is previously they haven't officially actually existed. There was the previous leader of Kislev known as Tsar Boris, or the Red Tsar, and he very famously rode around on a bear, but this was considered to be a relatively rare occurrence, at least as far as the tabletop was concerned. In the role-playing version of Warhammer, there is some more talk of other people having previously ridden bears, but it's still pretty rare, and there's some talk about the priests of Ursun, one of the gods worshipped in Kislev. Many of them would maybe have bears who were sort of pets, or perhaps even mounts for them, but it's still not a sort of regiment of bear riders or anything like that. And fans kind of loved the concept so much, they ran away with it. There were fan-made models, they appear in a lot of fan armies, the Bear Cavalry, but it's good to see them finally being welcomed officially in to the ranks of the Kislev army, and can't wait to see what those new models look like coming from Games Workshop. So that's really about it from what we've seen so far. I think the Bear Cavalry was probably going to be included in Total War Warhammer anyway. They're just such I wouldn't say iconic because they've never really officially been a part of it, but such a looked forward to unit that Creative Assembly would have been hard pressed not to include them in any future Kislevite army. But it's good to see that Games Workshop is maybe succumbing to the pressure as well and giving the fans what they want, which is Bear Cavalry for the Kislev army. So there we go, 2 new units. It's in the reimagining of the Kislevite army for the upcoming Warhammer Fantasy, and I can't wait to see what they come up with. It's going to be a long wait by all accounts, multiple years if reports are to be believed, so don't expect them anytime soon. We're more likely to see them in Total War Warhammer 3 before we see them on the tabletop. That is about it for the new units. If we have any more popping up, I will let you guys know. If this has piqued your interest or you're curious about some of the stuff we've looked at previously on the channel around Kislev, do check out the lore videos on the Tsarina and the Red Tsar, as well as maybe looking at some of the units I expect to be in Total War Warhammer, and maybe a bit of the history of Kislev itself. But, as always, guys, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. Alright, guys, bye.